Hello, and welcome to California in Focus. I'm Eliana Kernodle. As the controversy over California's reported exemption for Panera Bread continues to swirl, lawmakers are considering other exemptions to the law. Joining me to tell us more is the Center Square's California reporter, Kenneth Schrupp. Briefly, can you remind us what the initial report on this bakery exemption was?
Right. On September 14th, 2023, the California legislature passed a bill raising California's minimum wage for fast food workers to $20 per hour. What was interesting about this is that there was two exceptions. One made sense, the other not so much. The first was so that for fast food chains operating within grocery stores where the employees of those fast food establishments work for the grocery store and not for a fast food company. They didn't want to create some division of some labor divisions within the store. But this other exemption was to allow for fast food places that sell bread that they bake on premises as a standalone item to be exempt from this. And there's only one chain in America that meets that, and that is Panera. Panera is the only possible chain, and by California's definition of chain, that means a restaurant with more than 60 locations that isn't a sit-down service meal. So Panera is really the only one. And the largest franchisor in the United States, who is a former friend of Gavin Newsom's from school, although it seems like he might have been a few years ahead, billionaire Greg Flynn has donated over $150,000 to Newsom's campaigns. And according to reporting from Bloomberg, pushed Newsom's staff on the idea that Panera is not fast food and has always been vocally opposed to fast food minimum wages, including the bill that was passed in September.
So what developments have there been on this story this week since the report initially came out?
Well, California's legislature is trying to pass new exemptions to the fast food minimum wage, and the governor's office is coming out saying that this accusation that Newsom and Flynn and the outcome of Panera are somehow connected is absurd. The government spokesperson telling us, quote, "Our legal team has reviewed, and it appears Panera is not exempt from the law." I'm really not sure how true that is, because it appears that Panera is the only company that is exempt from the law. But let's move on to the other part. So now, after this entire kerfuffle, about a week later, Panera comes out and says that they will pay the $20 minimum wage regardless of whether or not they have an exemption. But that's only after pay-to-play allegations emerged. The reporting on this story drew national furor towards Newsom, and the franchisor was left with nothing to do but say he's going to pay the wage.
And as this controversy over this particular exemption has continued to make headlines, the legislature is considering some other exemptions, as you just mentioned. What are those?
These exemptions would be fairly broad, and it's really hard to understand why why this is supported by unions. These new exemptions would be for fast food restaurants at, quote, airports, hotels, large event centers, theme parks, museums, gambling establishments, corporate campuses, and certain public lands. What was very interesting is SEIU, the largest union in the state, and Unite Here, which is this union representing people in the hospitality industry employed in hotels, restaurants, airports, sports arenas, and convention centers, are the ones who are supporting these new exemptions to the minimum wage. And it really makes you wonder why.
And who is proposing these exemptions? Is it someone who had a problem with the minimum wage to begin with, or where are these coming from?
These exemptions have been proposed by Democratic legislators, probably at the behest of SEIU and Unite Here, who wrote letters of support for these exemptions. This bill was proposed by Assemblymember Chris Holden, whose largest donor is the Service Employees International Union, the SEIU. And they're also on the record as supporting the fast food minimum wage extremely vocally. So it really is interesting to see this happen.
And wasn't he the one who proposed the law to begin with?
Yeah, Chris Holden was the one who wrote the September 2023 minimum wage law that we're talking about. What was funny is when he asked about whether or not he knew about the exemption being added for Panera. He said he didn't know, he inherited it from another author, but he was the author of the bill, and he was the main author of the bill when the exemption was added. So there's really no way he could have plausible deniability over this not knowing what this information and what in this bill was, because there's very clear exemption made for Panera.
And Republicans are opposing the latest bill to add further exemptions. Why?
They didn't really speak of it as a matter of policy, but more as a matter of principle. Senate Minority Leader Brian Jones motioned to move the bill to the inactive file because he said, and I quote, "We need to send a message that this Senate, that this House, that these members, that this bipartisan group of legislators that are trying to make California better will not condone pay-to-play actions." We just don't know what's happening behind closed doors. We don't know why these exemptions are being considered. We don't really know what kind of games are being played without really being able to look more into donations and motivations of the groups involved with this.
Well, thank you for your insights today, Kenneth. Listeners can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com.
Are you tired of news that puts politics over people? At the nonprofit Franklin News Foundation, we believe in putting people over politics by delivering nonpartisan news and audio content that serves you, the American taxpayer. With Franklin News Foundation, you can read fact-based, state-focused news for free at thecentersquare.com. You can listen to civil, balanced conversations between policy experts through our podcast network at americastalking.com. Or you can get in-depth news on K-12 education spending, curriculum, and school safety at chalkboardnews.com. It's all free through Franklin, where we put you, the American taxpayer, first in every story, episode, and conversation. And it's only possible through our supporters. Together, we can produce content that puts people over politics and brings Americans the news they deserve. Become a supporter today at franklinnews.org/donate. Once again, that's franklinnews.org/donate.